Okay, morning everybody. Thanks for joining, even though we're a little bit late today. We had Michael Goodman's grandson's bris. He had a grandson.
Mazal tov.
Yeah, so it was a good reason to celebrate. Okay, so we said last time that we wanted to try do maybe some Rav Kook on the Parsha and see how we go with that, and take a break from the difficult, just like regular pieces. So I looked around and I actually found that that's where Anne is as well. She made her apologies. She's still at the bris. Hi Susan, thanks for joining later. So I looked around to see where can we find Rav Kook on the Parsha, and I found a very logical space for that, which is Beit Rav Kook in Yerushalayim, and obviously the foundation that stands behind it puts out something each week on the Parsha, written by Talmidim of Rav Kook and Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. So let's see how we go. We can learn them each week. They bring different commentaries. It's like a contemporary commentary on the Parsha. Each week from a different Talmud that's connected to Torat Rav Kook. So let's see how we go. Okay. Let me actually share the window. Okay, so this is the piece here. It's, each week they've got another thing for you to be able to download. It looks like this. So Daf Parshat Hashavua Beit Harav, and then each week there's like a nice PDF. It's all in Hebrew, so hopefully what we can add here is being able to translate it and then just think about the concepts behind it. Cool. Everybody can see.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go. Okay. So this is talking about Isha Sheruach, which is describing Yoshua. This is written by Rav Elisha Aviner, who is the Rosh Kollel at Yeshivat Birkat Moshe, which is in Ma'ale Adumim. Sarah's got a lot of family in Ma'ale Adumim. We actually lived there for 3 months when Yehuda was born, and I got to go sit in the yeshiva for a little bit in the afternoons. A really special place. This Rav Elisha Aviner is Rav Shlomo Aviner, his brother. So they're brothers and both amazing leaders in Torah. Shlomo Aviner, we know, is the Rosh Hashiva Bateret Kohanim in the Old City, in the renewed Jewish quarter, and the Rav of Beit El. I think Beit El, Aleph or Bet, whichever one. So this is his brother, who's like a massive Talmid Chacham and is the head of the Kollel at this yeshiva in Ma'ale Adumim, which is the Hesder yeshiva there. It's the yeshiva where Rav Nachum Rabinovich, who like a lot of American Jews know him. So Rav Rabinovich was like an amazing Rosh Yeshiva and posek. He passed away a few years ago. He was Rav Yoni Rosenzweig. You probably know better. Aviva Rosenzweig is from Renana. So Rav Yoni's rabbis, Rav Rabinovich, they were very close. So that's a little bit about who's writing this parasha piece, and it's about leadership, right? So it's about in this week's parasha, Moshe makes way for Yoshua, and he looks for he's looking to appoint someone, and we see this whole thing going on. So I thought we'd jump first into the actual text about that. So starting in here in chapter 27 in Bamidbar, it says Moshe Hashem Ne'mor. Moshe says to Hashem, Yivkod Hashem l'karuchot l'chol basar ish alayda. Let Hashem, source of the breath of all flesh, appoint someone over the community. Which is interesting, right? It's Moshe initiating, saying, Hashem, tell me who's going to take over. And I think it's very poignant to be learning this the morning after Netanyahu stood in American Congress, and I'm sure everybody's got their own opinions, but I think on a basic level, it was he really outfitted himself well and represented the Jewish people well and the Jewish state, and to see families with the hostages, and Noah Argamani was rescued, and the tremendous bravery that he showcased of the different soldiers. He told a good story, bringing all the different pieces together, and I think I saw somewhere it's like the record of the most ovations ever given in the Congress, like 55. So really quite amazing. Ma, today is my grandfather's Yotzat, yeah, Moshe Eliezer. what's his Hebrew name? You're on mute.
Moshe ben Eliezer.
Moshe ben Eliezer. So our learning should be Lilu Nishmat Moshe ben Eliezer, and it's appropriate that we're learning about his namesake Moshe Rabbeinu. So tomorrow Safa, my late grandfather, and my mom's father. So this should be an Aliyah for his neshama. So thanks for joining. Okay, so here we have, in the context of all this leadership going on, as we said, Netanyahu stood up in Congress, but also there's this whole leadership movement and different debates going on in America now, with Biden stepping down and Harris stepping up and Trump being Trump and right. There's a lot of we're not going to get into politics here, but the nature of leadership and how we choose our leaders and how we relate to them is something that's essential. And this is like quite a key piece when thinking about how we rate and consider our leadership. This is really like, this is the first time where we've got Moshe, who was chosen, from Hashem. We calls out him in the snare, in the burning bush, and then he takes over and he leads and he moves us from, really births us. He's like the doula, I guess, right? Like Hashem births us in Egypt, and he's the doula that takes us out, leads us, gives us the Torah, takes us out into the Midbar, almost gets us into Eretz Israel. And he's very much there in the most formative space of Am Yisrael. And the question is, okay, well, who's going to be able to step into his shoes? Who's going to be able to take over? So here again, you've got Hashem Elokai Rukod L'chol Basar Ish Elayda. It's Hashem, source of the breath of all flesh, appoint someone. Now, and this Dvar Torah is going to go into the specific language here, Elokai Ruchot. What does that mean? God of the spirits of all flesh. Of the nature of all flesh, someone who will be appointed over the community. Shall go out before them and come in before them. Who will take them out and bring them in. And it shouldn't be that the community of Hashem, it doesn't say Am Yisrael or the people of Israel, it says Hashem's community, i.e. all my leadership has been to manifest your leadership, Hashem. And therefore, I'm not calling it, Bnei Israel. I'm calling it your community. And therefore, I'm saying to you on the board, right, on the heavenly board, you need to make the decision as the ultimate chairman to bring on the next leader, because not just because I'm leaving and I want you to just find someone to do my job, but because my job was always in doing your job, in leading this people for you. And therefore, that's it can't be that they need to find the right person so that they will not feel like they are without a shepherd. Hashem says to Moshe, take for you. Also interesting, lech lecha, right? Kach lecha, shlach lecha, kach lecha. Joshua, Moshe says, you need to find someone for your community, which I've looked after, and he says, take for yourself, Yeshua ben Nun. I haven't seen any Mefarshim on that. I'm just noticing now. And comes back to this point of Ish Asher Ruach Bo. He is a person that has there's the Ruach in him. And you should do smicha on him. You should put your hands on him and hand it over. Elazar. What's Zayd Eliezer's name? Moshe Eliezer, right? So there you got Moshe and Elazar in the same thing. And then standing before Elazar the priest and before the whole community, and there will be a public display of the handover of power. So we see a lot of things in terms of what are the traits our leaders should have. How should the transfer of power look? Right? It should be very public. It should be very much that it's not Hashem saying, okay, Moshe, you cast to the side, and now let me anoint the next person. No, Hashem invested his leadership and authority in Moshe, and Moshe must be the one to show that he's willingly handing over that mantle to Yeshua. So I think a lot of powerful lessons over here. And then ultimately, invest with him, invest him with some of your authority. So that's what Hodcha is translated as over here, as some of your authority. But Hodcha is like your glory, right? Your shine, your glory. Moshe, hand over some of your glory and your authority so that the whole Israelite community will obey. Give over some of your shine. There we go. So let's just finish it off. ושאל במשפט ההורים לפני השם, על פי יצאו ועל פיו יבוא, הוא וכל בני ישראל בכל העדה. He'll present himself to Elazar the priest, who shall make the decision making with the Urim and Tumim of Hashem, and then by such instruction they'll go out and come in, all of Israel and the whole community. ויעש משה כאשר ציווה השם אותו ויקח את יהושע ויעמידהו לפני אלעזר הכהן ולפני כל העדה. So Moshe does just as Hashem has commanded him, and he puts he takes Yeshua and puts him in front of Elazar, who then gives him the smicha. ויסמוך את ידיו עליו ויצווהו כאשר דיבר השם ביד משה. So everything is done like very much according to there's like buy-in from everybody. There's buy-in from Hashem, buy-in from Moshe, buy-in from Elazar Kohen. Very respectful and like procedural space, so that the transfer of power goes through safely and securely and with the right inspiration. Okay, so even in the Parshat there's obviously a lot of lessons. Let's see what Rav Aviner says over here. He says, "B'ma'aneh lebakashat Moshe lemanot manhig she'yachlif oto, omer Hashem leMoshe." So in Moshe's plea to Hashem to find a replacement leader, Hashem says to Moshe, קח לך את יהושע בן נון, איש אשר רוח בו. Found Yeshua ben Nun, a person who has spirit within him. But Tamu HaMefarshim, the commentators were astounded. וכי איש שאין בו רוח, like, and you find someone who doesn't have a spirit. You find someone who doesn't have a spirit, they dead. So what does it mean you're going to find someone who's spirited? מה היתרון איש אשר רוח בו? What is he actually asking? What's the benefit of adding this question? Rashi בהמשך לביאור לפסוק, אלוקי הרוחות לכל בשר פירש. So Rashi says something about this notion of ruach, but he says it on the next verse, when Moshe says to Hashem, bring someone who's let's just check, we're getting everybody right over here. Yeah, when Moshe says to Hashem, find someone who's a god, you've got Hashem Elokei Ruchot. When he turns to Hashem, he says, you the one who are the god of all of the spirits. So Rashi over there says, what does spirit mean? שיוכל להלוך כנגד רוחו של כל אחד ואחד. So why does Moshe address Hashem like that? Because he's saying the leader has to be someone who can go against everybody's spirit, or can rather correspond according to everybody's spirit. And he explains, מנהיג שיסובל כל אחד ואחד לפי דעתו. A leader who's able to tolerate and make space for each and every single person according to their opinion. So you've got space. Elokei Ruchot, Hashem is able to contain lots of people with lots of their different opinions, and therefore the leader should be able to handle that. Even though in the original request it's like find someone who has ruach bo, when he talks about Yeshua, הדרישה מהמנהיג היא לסבול את הרוחות. So the individual leader has to have ruach within him. But why must he have ruach within him? In order for him to be able to tolerate and make space for all the different spirits and personalities and opinions of all those people he has to lead. Hashonot ba'umah, the different ones in the nation. להכיל את הגוונים השונים, to be able to make a space to contain all the different facets and types of people. ללכד אותם, in order to pull them all together, ולתת לכל אחד את מה שדרוש לו, and in order to be able to give to each person what they need. So that's a true leader, right? A true leader, we know we've seen lots of different forms of leadership across history, where you have, I don't know, democratic is the one that sort of makes space for everybody to have their own voice in theory. Then you have communism, which blots out the voice of the individual. It's about saying this is the way the state is running, and everybody, you're going to have to do the work that you can do. But ultimately, everybody gets paid the same, and everybody gets the same rights and the same, the sort of like the same benefits. It's all the same, no matter how different your contribution is, and different things like that. So we've seen in history how politics can play to those different pieces. And Hashem is saying over here, Moshe, you need to be a leader that first and foremost, or that he's bringing Yeshua in to be the leadership of a nation that's going to have lots of different opinions, and those opinions need to be respected, and there need to be space for each person in their own unique, with their own unique personality. Leadership in Judaism is not throwing a heavy-handed, top-heavy law on top of everybody and turn them into robots that have to follow it. Like you see in the more extreme religions, like Islam, it's just fit in. They have to fit in and conform to the same thing. You have this like fear around this Sharia law. Not only is it like, do I identify with these values? It's like, what does my identity matter within a value system that's so strong and dictatorial, and you can't think certain things, you can't write certain things, you can't say certain things, you can't be with certain people. So Judaism is very firmly against that. Okay, let's see the next part. So according to this first explanation of how we saw Rashi, Rabbi Aviner wanted to say that the Isha Sheruach Bo is the same thing as Elokei Ruchot. It's the same thing, it's the same message. But according to other Mefarshim, there's a difference between Ruach and Ruchot. So this is what it says. Hanatziv be'emek hadavar. So Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Velazhin Yeshiva, the first like actual yeshiva in the modern era, and he was Rav Kook's Rav. Right, Rav Kook learned from the Netziv in Europe in Velazhin. So he says the following: Rucho hainu da'ato. So Rucho, his spirit means his opinion, or made b'fnei atzmo. He must be able to have his own opinion and be able to think independently. He must be able to have his own opinion. He mustn't be pulled after his own, on the one hand, his own let's say his own like hedonistic opinion. He must know, what are my values? I stand by my values. I'm not going to be influenced by the values of others. That they're trying to pull me to do what they want, or even in my own space, I'm not going to be pulled after different desires. I'm going to stand by my fundamentals. Right, a leader needs to be principled. Kobe, one of his big things is principle-centered leadership. You make your leadership decisions based on whether they fit with your principles or not in terms of how the wind blows. You must have, right, so in reference to, you don't go with the way the wind blows, you have your own wind within yourself, your own spirit, and which is fixed. Ruach bo, הכוונה לעמוד, לעמוד שדרה רוחני. Person has to have a spiritual spine. Just like we know, if we didn't have a physical spine, our body would be all over the place, we wouldn't be able to move forward, do anything. Everybody knows what back pain does, right? When your back's sore, you can't do anything. So same thing spiritually. If you don't have a spiritual spine, you can't do anything spiritually. That's a powerful metaphor. The leader needs to be independent. So not Republican, not Democrat, needs to be independent. Just kidding. Munhag al yaday rucho, he needs to be led by his spirit. Shikulim zarim enam amurim liot mashpim alav. Foreign factors shouldn't be allowed to influence him. Hu ne'eman ledarko, he's true to his way, haruchanit, his spiritual way. Ve'eneno soteh mimena biglal interesim chomriyim or kedai limtzo chen b'nei hatzibur, and he doesn't deviate because of other material interests, or in order just to please the community. Easier said than done, right? So that's the Netziv. Netziv says Elokei Ruchot is something else that we asking from Hashem. Ruach Bo, as the leader, is that this person has to be very firmly cemented in their own spirit, and be able to not be moved and cajoled by other people. The those that combine both the commentaries we've seen before. The leader does need to go in depth and understand the neshama, the spirit of each person. He needs to understand each person. But he himself can't be a person that's just made up by as a aggregation of everybody else's spirits and everybody else's thoughts. You can't just be the sum total of what everybody else wants. He needs to understand people, but he needs to also stand on his own independently. Calls are a person who's able to contain in his heart all the different flows of different spirits and personalities, and he can sort of like let them all exist next to each other, and he can speak to each of them. Kol asher yeh haruach lalechet, in order to give his spirit and to inspire each person. Ve'en yodea sof sof batzmo mahu v'la'an poni v'adam. So he's saying there's a danger here that someone who takes in everybody's spirits and tries to understand everybody loses himself in the process and can't do that. Ish asher ruach bo bal ruach echad. So the person who has a spirit within him knows what his values are. He knows what his unique characteristics are. Ish shebarulo mahu. He knows, it's clear to him who he is. Madar kol mashkapaton. What is his way, his manner, and what is his ideology on life. Kachi darko shel manhig. This is the way of a leader. A leader needs to know how to talk to everybody. He needs to know how to understand everybody. He needs to see everybody. But first and foremost, he needs to be rooted within himself. So there needs to be that disconnect. I can understand everybody. I can tolerate everybody. I can appreciate everybody. But I first and foremost need to know who I am. And I can't lose myself in the pursuit of understanding everybody else. Maran Harav, so who's that? He says that in number 4. So that's Rav Weinberg, Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg Zatzal. So that's that opinion. Okay, next opinion. Maran Harav Zatzal. So what does Rav Kook say? So he goes into depth in understanding the distinction between these terms of Elokei Ruchot and Ishishe Ruach Bo. So he talks about this Parshat Pinchas, and where he Biotor of Zoimel, I think he was a Rab, must have been in this is in Switzerland or somewhere, the Pinchas. So he writes us in like a notebook. That's where we found this idea. He says, Ha'im Amishal Zakuk, Lishnei Manigim or Manig Echad. Does Amishal need 2 leaders or 1 leader? Amishal Zakuk Lishtei Hanagot. Amishal needs two types of leadership. Hanaga Ruchanit, Hanaga Chomit Leumit. It needs spiritual leadership and it needs national material leadership. Can these 2 types of leadership, spiritual and physical, be contained within one personality? Or is the distinction and the space between these 2 types of leadership, do they not allow for a unity of leadership? Ish haruach uyan lechomer uvatel oto. A spiritual person is doesn't manage chomer so much, and he nullifies it, right? Like people who are very spiritual and very into their spiritual leadership, sometimes they don't have space and they don't tolerate the material needs, and so they wipe them out, and it's an important need. Isha chomer, a person who is a more material driven person, he can't understand. He's sometimes gets in the way of spiritual pursuits. If this is the way, then the only way to do it is to split the leadership. Maran Harav Zatzal, so our teacher Rav Kook says, for most people, we have this internal conflict between spirit and physical. There's like my physical needs I want to do. I want to binge on Netflix. I want to eat a lot of food. And that comes at the cost of shul and learning and spirituality and meditation and things like that, right? So most of us, we know that well. I know it well. I'm a very flawed person. You guys less so, but I'll talk about myself. Divrei HaKadmonim sheBinyan haguf hu churban hasechel. So the words of the ancients, they would say, Binyan haguf hu churban hasechel. When you build the body, it causes a destruction for the intellect, for the mind. And the more I focus on my body, it's very, very, very rare we find massive bodybuilders who are deep thinkers. Unlike Schwarzenegger, he's a great thinker. But it's very, very rare that you see someone who's like, you normally think, okay, that's the jock. Okay? And the more his muscles are bulging, the less his brain is working. That's generally how we see things. So that's what the ancient thinkers used to say. Ubinyan sechel, who churban haguf, and someone who builds their intellect it destroys their body. So someone who spends all their time sitting and toiling over texts and learning different things, they don't generally win the beauty championship, right? They don't win the weightlifting championship, because you're investing time into one or the other. If you're spending time learning and doing that in a really deep way, it often comes at the cost of having a 6-pack. Okay. So that's what the Kadmonim say. Let's see if he agrees or disagrees. Amorim, lo rak b'ishaprati ela gam b'umma. So the things that we're saying here is relevant for an individual person, but also relevant for a nation. So on a national level, you find nations that are excellent at building the material side of things, but they're spiritually decayed. Right, so maybe I think that's the challenge America faces. Right, it's like so chomrani, so very material, and that they invest into universities and things like that. But because their ultimate pursuit is material, you could say, I was talking to someone yesterday, like the part of this thing with the woke is like wherever there's anything that's forcing me to do anything without me like fully saying I want to do it, they like chuck it. So identity is something that actually forces you to hold according to a certain notion or to be a certain thing. So no, we've got to chuck out identity. So there is this like this whatever I feel is important, respect my feelings, respect my space, and which is obviously important if someone's attacking you. But on a normal day, you should know how to challenge your feelings and know how to challenge yourself to live according to certain values. So when you don't have that, then you just have this woke thing where it's like, I'm not even bound to my own identity. I can define who I am. I look at this body, and this body is telling me a certain thing, but that's just a suggestion. It's a suggestion that I'm a male. This morning I woke up and I want to identify as a female. Who are you to tell me that there's a conventional thinking that because I woke up with a male's body, I need to be male today? Right? So it's ridiculous because we are, we people that think more than 4 minutes a day. I think at least you kind of have to come to the shir, so I think for 30 minutes a week. But that's where this woke takes you, and that fits into this idea of binyan haguf u'churban hashechel. The more we focus on materialism and hedonism, the more we lose the ability to focus on our principles and spirit. Okay, so that's the first idea, right? That's what the Kadmonim say, right? The ancient thinkers, that these things stand in contrast: physical versus spiritual, spiritual versus physical. Aval ha'idiyalhu, but the ideal is shachomer v'aruach lo yisatru echad et hasheni v'lo yilchemu ze b'zeh. The ideal in the Jewish value is that the material and the spiritual do not contradict one another. Ela yitachdu tachat hanagat Aruach, rather that they unite under the leadership of the Spirit, after the fact that because of the fact that the Ruach Yikadesh Tachomer, the Spirit will uplift the Chomer, will sanctify the material. Oh, there's Anne. Anne, welcome. How was your bagel? Not here yet. Okay, we'll finish on. Welcome, Anne. Good to have you. Thanks for joining. So,
Thank you.
no, we're just talking about bringing the physical and the spiritual together. So it's good. We had a good physical breakfast to celebrate the Brit, which is a spiritual milestone. And now you're stepping off from the bagel and you're bookending it again with spiritual. So you started with Brit Milah mitzvah, Sudat mitzvah, which is already sanctified, and now coming back to Torah. So it's a good way to go. And you didn't even have to listen to it for half an hour. You just get the summary one-liner. Okay, we're finishing the last line. So the Spirit will transform the building and the investment in the material aspect. It becomes a mitzvah, right? So you can say that you're building a house. It's a very material thing, right? It's very material. Where's the Spirit? And then you say, no, this is not just a regular house. This is going to be the Beit HaMikdash, right? So the building now serves a spiritual purpose. So the Spirit leads and then turns the physical into something that's highly dedicated. We've spoken about it before. Rav Kook's got this idea. He said, how could it be that you've got regular workers building the Beit HaMikdash? Right? There wasn't a rule that only Kohanim could build the Beit HaMikdash. It was regular workers. So at that stage of the physical building, when they were building the Beit HaMikdash, the workers would do the work, and they would do. But afterwards, because we always build the physical as the foundation, and then the Spirit comes to retroactively invest that material effort with spiritual sanctification. So afterwards, the Beit HaMikdash comes, and you can't have a Beit HaMikdash if you didn't have bricks. You can meditate and be the most spiritual person in the world, but if the Beit HaMikdash isn't built, it's not there. So that's how an example of how the spirit leads the physical. Haruach yafochet binyan hachomer. The spirit will transform the building of the material, the mitzvah shel binyan ha'omah, to a mitzvah of the building of the nation with tikkuna and its refinement. Al manat she'omah tatzliach darka, so that the nation will be successful in its way. Tiyeh le'or goyim v'takrin alamot ha'olam. It'll be a light to the nations and will shine forth to all the nations of the world. Uma meduldelet, a withered nation. Lo tatzliach lahavot migdal or lumot ha'olam. If you've got a nation that's, think about us in the shtetl, we were able to shine a light when we were in the shtetl and in Europe and in Galut. We were able to shine a light as big as we were, which was individual people. So you could shine a light here, you could shine a light there. Now we've got a nation, we've got a country, we've got a proud army. You hear the way that Netanyahu talks about, our soldiers serving a higher purpose. You couldn't talk about a Jewish soldier for thousands and thousands of years. Now you've got these Jewish soldiers who, were saved from Ethiopia, who now runs eight miles to the battlefront and fights people, and then his prime minister gets invited to the biggest congress in the free world and has that platform. That's a Migdal Or, right? That's a tower of light. But if we didn't have a functioning country, we didn't have a functioning economy and a functioning army and health system and welfare and etc., we would never have been in that space of being such a light into the nation. So, the light is as strong as the candle underneath it. That's how long it lasts for, and how broadly and it shines brightly. So you have to have that. You have to have this material and spiritual side. And in Taman Hikazel Am Yisrael, can we find a leader in Am Yisrael who's got both the spiritual prowess and the physical prowess? He is a Talmid Chacham with a six-pack. Can there be such a thing? Ken, Yoshua. Right, Yoshua is that person. Ish asher ruach bo. He is an ish. He's a physical man who has the spirit in him. Ruach achat hamachila. Right. So now we understand why is he calling it ruach. Not say is he alive or dead, because then why do we need to say it? Everybody has a ruach. But ish asher ruach bo. Right. He has a spirit that's within him, within his body, within his physical space. Ruach achat hamachila betocha. It's one spirit that integrates physical as well. Hamachila betocha beichud shalem, in a perfect unity. Umilei et hanaga haruchanit v'hanaga chomrit leumit. And with it, he can fulfill the spiritual leadership and the material national leadership. So that is now the understanding we have of Yeshua coming from Elokei Aruchot to Ish Asher Ruach Bo, and Rav Kook's understanding of Ish Asher Ruach Bo is not there to say you need to find someone who's got a heartbeat, which unfortunately a lot of the countries just do sometimes, but someone whose heart beats with this incredible and rare unity of the physical and the spiritual coming together. Please God, we should all be zoche tomorrow to Mashiach coming down and showing that, and if not, then just amazing, phenomenal leadership that integrates both the spirit and the material in a way that we can be proud of, in a way that can lead us towards better days for the whole world. Amen. Okay. A little bit more manageable. This one. Yeah, this is something a better, more